might recognize this cemetery from countless films that take place in New York City. Every time a character in the film dies in this city, they have their funeral procession in the largest cemetery in all of America, and one of the oldest cemeteries in all of New York City, in the outer borough of Queens. We are in Calvary Cemetery. There are more people dead in Calvary Cemetery than there are people living in Queens. Over 3 million people interred in the 4 sections of Calvary Cemetery. Today on Hidden History, I'm Ariel with Urbanist. We're going to learn about the cemetery, how it got started, and see 2 specific monuments that I'm excited to show you today. I'm Ariel with Urbanist. This is Hidden History, the show where I show you the places you won't find in the guidebooks and the history you won't learn in the textbooks. Let me know where you're watching from, and let's walk around the largest cemetery in America. Hello Sandra, hello Ellen, hello Kay, hello Maureen, hello Reme, hello Liz, hello Rosaline, hello Arlinda, hello Sally, hello Irene, hello George, Tom, Marnie, Jen. We have so many people tuning in here. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Calvary Cemetery, one of the largest cemetery in all of the United States of America. This cemetery has more people interned here, that means buried here, than there are people living in Queens, more people living in Chicago, more people living in most major American cities. 3 million people all laying rest here in this cemetery. But how did it get started? How did it get so crowded? And why is it so famous for Hollywood movies? Well, that we're going to learn as we explore this cemetery and see the people buried here and also the monuments that are located here, including a little New York City park that is completely surrounded by this cemetery. Hello, Brian. Welcome. Hello, Ciao the Puerto from Milan. Hello, William from Spartanburg, South Carolina. Hello, Emmy from Netherlands. Nice to see you here. Hello, Lisa from the Upper East Side. Rosalind, you can't hear me. Don't worry, I think you can hear me now. So here we're seeing the cross used in many Gaelic cultures. And of course, you're going to see a lot of Irish last names. This is John McManus. So where are we located? Well, we are located in Queens, New York. Queens, one of the outer boroughs of New York City. New York City is comprised of 5 boroughs. The borough that all of you know of is Manhattan, and we're going to see very beautiful views of its skyline from this cemetery. And we're located right at the border of Maspeth, Woodside, Queens, which are 2 neighborhoods in Queens. Maspeth being one of the older neighborhoods in Queens that has a very large Irish American population. And then we have Greenpoint, Brooklyn, right next door. In front of us, we have the Kosciuszko Bridge. Kosciuszko Bridge is the bridge that goes above Newton Creek, the bog with the black goo underneath that we talked about a few episodes ago in Hidden History. And then that leads all the way to Greenpoint. A couple of episodes of Doctor Who have also been here. I remember seeing one of them. Let me know if you... I remember seeing one of them with the Doctor Who that was played by Matt Smith. If there was any other Doctor Who episodes, let me know. So this is the Kosciuszko Bridge, which is the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway, runs all the way through Queens, all the way into Brooklyn, past Greenpoint, into Williamsburg, and further down into the borough of Brooklyn. So let's go back to 1832. A huge epidemic of cholera broke out in New York City. 3,700 people perished. Over 80,000 people left the city, going to far healthier places. However, New York was already packed to the brim. New York meaning Manhattan, because at that time the city of New York was just the island of Manhattan. Manhattan extended all the way until 42nd Street and packed to the brim. People really didn't venture farther north unless if you were living in the village of Harlem. So as people were burying their dead all around the lower half of Manhattan, they end up getting overcrowded. There was no more space for all these poor victims of cholera and all these poor victims of the Mexican War and the family who had soldiers who fought in that war coming back home to bury them here. There was also no space. New York City, outside of Manhattan and probably certain areas of Brooklyn, was basically just farmland, emptiness. There was no one really settling here. Queens at that time was just a bunch of farmland. However, there was a second fear with the dead in Manhattan's graveyards. As you know, we've covered parks like Union Square, Washington Square Park, and also Madison Square Park, which all used to be paupers' graves or potter's fields. Places where they would bury the people who were too poor to afford a gravestone, or the people who were unnamed and unidentified. By the late 1800s, after all these cholera epidemics took over cities like New York, there was a certain suspicion that the dead would harbor disease, that the dead, combining with the water supply, would spread cholera all around the other parts of the city. So they didn't want to take the chance of burying any more dead in the already crowded fields of Madison Square Park, Union Square Park, or Washington Square Park. Modern day parks, they used to just be graveyards. So where else to bury them? They couldn't really do it in modern day Central Park before it was built, because it was really rocky and wasn't really good for building literally anything. So maybe the church decided to build all the way up in North 150th Street. And that was ample space. But then another thing happened. Two things happened. One, Irish started coming here to America in droves. Millions of Irish coming here, so much so that by the late 1800s, over 25% of New Yorkers were of Irish descent. The second factor was the war that we talked about in the last Hidden History episode. The war that shook America down to its very core. The war that took more lives than World War II, World War I, Spanish-American War, Mexican War, and the American Revolution in American casualties combined. That was the Civil War. Minimum 700,000 people died in this war, but estimates go even higher. Up to 800,000 people might have died. A lot of them New Yorkers. Where to bury these people? Where to bury a lot of them who were Irish descendants? Irish descendants being mostly Catholic. They couldn't be buried in any of the few Protestant burial sites in Lower Manhattan that had some capacity. They had to find somewhere else. So, St. Patrick's Cathedral in Old St. Patrick's Church in modern-day Nolita, also known as Little Italy, decided to buy up some land here in the outer borough of Queens. It used to be just a bunch of farmland. Nothing really here to build besides a few farmhouses and a few crop fields. But they seized that opportunity. And they buried the first few Irish here. One of them being Emmett Ennis. Hello Xavier, hello Gayatri. Kuskioso Ku Bridge. Yeah, a lot of New Yorkers have a huge issue with pronouncing that bridge's name. It's a very difficult to pronounce Polish name, and in Polish there's a lot of portions of the word that are not so easily translated to English speakers. So thank you, George. Hello, Millicent, Upper West Side. Hello, Phil from Cornwall. So we have so many people tuning in here. So the first woman buried here was Emma Ennis. And I'm not entirely sure if we can spot her exact grave, but we're going to stroll around soon. Emma Ennis was the very first woman buried here after these lands were bought by Old St. Pat's. Old St. Pat's reached capacity in their 2 graveyard sites in Lower Manhattan, and then they extended up to Uptown Manhattan around 150th Street and also ran out of space. So they decided to buy up land here. And Emma Ennis was a 29-year-old woman. No one really knows what she died from. The only thing you can find in any historical record and any newspaper, people said that she died of a broken heart. And she was the first person to be buried here in 1848. The cemetery was starting construction in 1845. However, there were people buried here before then. Before there ever was a Calvary Cemetery, mostly Catholic cemetery, there was a few Protestant cemeteries all around this space, dating back all the way to the 1600s. However, this was a good opportunity because here you had basically unlimited space, very cheap land, and also very accessible via the ferry. We have the huge ports of Newton Creek right down there. It's one of the most polluted creeks in all of the U.S. And then we have the city skyline just across these trees, which I'll show you soon. How long would it take to walk this cemetery? So, when Old St. Pat's built the cemetery, they intended to first build this section. This is the first Calvary Cemetery, also known as Old Calvary Cemetery. But then they wanted to extend to more and more, up to they built 4 sections of the cemetery. Each section was named after the catacombs of Rome, where early Christians were buried illegally underneath the eternal city that we all know and love in Italy. These 4 sections were named Saint Sebastian and Saint Agnes, and there was 2 other names associated with these cemeteries. However, I mentioned this is huge. It's massive. It's gigantic. You're right, Maureen. April, it'll probably take a very long time to walk around. We're going to see how much we can walk around today. But I mentioned that there was another event that happened that New York City needed way more space to bury their dead, and that was the Civil War. Here is Calvary Monument, or Calvary Park. Let me show you the park sign right over here. Yes, I know we have a few Polish viewers, so if anyone could really break down how to pronounce this bridge name, let me know. It's named after a Polish American who I think fought in World War I or World War II. It was named, Robert Moses is the one who suggested to name the bridge after that Polish war hero. So this is Calvary Park, and Calvary Park is this is an actual New York City park, completely surrounded by a cemetery. So 3 million people here. But what is this monument? Well, this monument may look familiar because almost the same exact one is in Greenwood Cemetery. Now, unlike Greenwood Cemetery or Woodlawn or the huge cemetery in Staten Island, this one is not so bucolic. We're going to walk around, we're going to see it's not so pretty. We'll get to why that is after I talk about this monument over here. This is the Civil War monument. And New York City had many Civil War soldiers in their hospitals spread all throughout the city. Unfortunately, these soldiers had grave injuries, some of them. and they passed away in the hospital, away from war, trying to recover, but nothing could have been done to save them. So the city offered free burials for those men. Over 21 Union soldiers are buried right in this lot. The statues are made out of copper, unlike the statues made out of zinc in Greenwood Cemetery. So in Greenwood Cemetery, they still have that beautiful metallic color. Here, they're getting green. So a lot of discussion on how you pronounce Kosciuszko. So pardon me for my own pronunciation for any Polish viewers watching, or any rare New Yorkers that really know the proper pronunciation. But here's a Civil War monument. I am walking right now. We are all walking on New York City Park grounds. So as I mentioned, Civil War, minimum 700,000 people perished. It was the American war that has had the most casualties of any other war combined. Here we have depictions of those men who fought in those wars with very typical beard styles that you would see at that time. No, George, from what I've read, these are copper. A few people still paying their tributes. Hey, Maureen, your grandparents are buried here along with many grand aunts and uncles. Isn't Wild Bill Hickok buried here? Ooh, I'm not entirely sure. I don't think so. Wild Bill was mostly based in the out west in the frontier. I don't think he was a New Yorker. Other famous people buried here are Governor Al Smith, which I also talked about in one of my Hidden History episodes. He was the governor who ended up building the Empire State Building and becoming the first president of the Empire State Building. He also mentored Robert Moses, who was the great city planner of New York. I say great in terms of powerful, though he did many things that were both great, amazing for the city, also controversial. Good morning, Lori from Austin, Texas. Welcome. Yeah, Wild Bill, I'm not surprised that he's in South Dakota, yeah. So here it says, by the mayor, alderman, and commonalty of the city of New York. This one's very rusted. So this is how it probably would look to see the Statue of Liberty up close. Also a copper statue, and when copper oxidizes, it becomes this greenish color. There's an old American flag. I'm not sure how old this is, but it could be more than a few years old, judging by its color. So that is the Civil War monument, and I would say many of these men were probably Catholic. Now, being Catholic in New York City wasn't the easiest thing in the Civil War era in the 1860s, 1870s. So these beautiful dragonflies. Check these out. Sorry, I got distracted by all the dragonflies. Alright, let's keep on walking. So now we're going to walk over and explore a little bit more. We're going to see a replica of a cathedral that I will end up showing you in Paris 2 weeks from now. If you can guess what cathedral that is, let me know. So if you have family members buried here, what are their names? I would love to know their names. Maybe we'll bump into it off chance. We see their names. That'll be amazing. And Donald says, thank God Robert Moses didn't get his way about running a freeway through Central Park. It was through Washington Square Park. And yeah, he was a city planner, did amazing things, but he also kind of went a little bit wild towards the end of his career. So you'll see a lot of names that are, as I mentioned, Irish, like Solan over here. And we'll also see a lot of them that are Italian, like Ferro, Paglialonga. Ooh, that one's hard. We have so many people tuning in today. Wow, I'm glad for the turnout. Thank you everyone who shared this video. Oh, wow. Lynn, don't worry. The replay will be up for everyone. Here we have DeVito. No one knows, might be related to the DeVito family of the famous actor of the same name, Danny DeVito. And we have some Spanish names, like Garcia over here. So McGuinness, Garcia, we have a few like Eastern European / Russian names like Wisniewski, Callaghan, Lovicino, Costales. So why isn't this kind of as bucolic with a bunch of beautiful pathways as Greenwood Cemetery? Well, as I mentioned, it was very hard being Catholic in the 1860s, 1870s. There was a lot of persecution of the Catholics. Sometimes there was all-out battles against the Catholic residents, as you can see in films like Gangs of New York, which is based on historical record. And also, it was very hard to build a huge business as a Catholic. Governor Al Smith was basically the first major Catholic politician in the U.S., and that was all the way in the 1920s. And he became the first presidential candidate in early 1930s against Franklin Delano Roosevelt as the first Catholic presidential candidate. However, the first Catholic president ended up being John F. Kennedy. So it took a while for this new religion and these new people groups to really fully integrate into the United States of America. So a lot of the people who were Irish and then later Italian and Polish didn't have that much money, and a lot of them were working class. And also they couldn't be buried in Protestant graveyards. So Calvary Cemetery wasn't really built to be a bucolic park like Greenwood, which was Protestant. It was meant to be built as a more of a beautiful, more of a like practical cemetery, just to get as many people in here as possible. So the grass is not mowed that well, and you don't really see that many people here at all. And sounds weird, but we recently did a yoga in a local historical cemetery to raise money to fix our Civil War graves monuments. Oh, cool, Susan, that's awesome. Oh, that's interesting, to do yoga in the cemetery. Any good views of the New York City skyline? I think we'll be coming up to them soon. Let me pick up the pace. We're going to one more monument, and then let's see if we can see the New York City skyline. If you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to ask. This broadcast wasn't too intense on stories, except for what I just recounted in the beginning. So if you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to ask. Now let's head to a replica of a cathedral from Paris here in New York City. So if you've ever been to Paris, which I'm going to be doing 2 weeks from now, and you'll be seeing me live from there, you might notice a very iconic church. It's not Notre Dame, which is definitely a super iconic church, but it's the second most iconic cathedral in Paris. Not Saint-Sulpice either, but the Sacre Coeur on top of Montmartre in Paris, France. And the architects here decided to build in the same exact style as Sacre Coeur. And this is kind of like the mini Sacre Coeur of New York City. Same exact dome, the same exact 2 spires and columns in the front. And here it is. A little piece of Paris in New York. It says, "I am the resurrection and the life," it says in the front. It's probably very close to something that's quoted from Jesus. So yeah, it's very beautiful. Very wonderful. And it's pretty sizable for a cemetery. There appears to be no one here. Wow. Amazing. So stay tuned, because next 2 weeks from now, from between the 14th and the 28th, on one of those days, I'll be actually doing a tour of Sacre Coeur. So stay tuned for that. And we'll see if it's similar inside. It needs a little bit of repair. It does. So Sacre Coeur translates, yes, Phil, correct, into Sacred Heart. So why is there an alarm right inside here? Beneath the altar of this little Sacre Coeur in the middle of New York City, or Sagrada Corazon, which is also used in Spanish cathedrals, is the crypts where some of the major Catholic bishops and cardinals, not cardinals, but bishops, and probably monsignors are buried here, or entombed here. So this is a crypts as well. So yep, Naomi, you're right. They're access to not a catacomb, but more of a crypt. Catacomb would be more deeper underground and a little bit more looser. And pardon my French. Thank you for the correction. Uh-oh, I'm locked in. All right, I'm not locked in. Whew. Okay, thank God I put on some holy water. It ended up opening up the door for me. All right, so let's go to the views for our final portion of this tour. Welcome to Calvary Cemetery. I'm going to show you the amazing views of right down here. Let's go. So yes, I'll be going to the graveyard in I'll be going to the graveyard in Paris. I'll also be showing you Montmartre, and I'll be showing you Sacre Coeur as well, and many other things of Paris for 2 weeks. But before we talk about Paris, let me show you why this cemetery is so unique in America. It's so interesting because it's right in front of the massive, beautiful skyline of New York City. Huge, insurmountable views of Manhattan. Not just downtown Manhattan, but also Midtown. So there we have the Empire State Building. Wow, look at this. This is why so many films have been made here. Godfather, Daredevil, multiple Spider-Man movies. If you know any other films that have been filmed here, let me know. But check this out. That's why this cemetery is so iconic. Zoom in. And thank you everyone who's been sharing this video and liking it and commenting. If you have any last remaining questions, feel free to ask. So you are surrounded by the city here. And you basically have the cemetery all to yourself. So the cemetery is open till 4:30 p.m. The offices, you don't really need to go through any offices or anything, but if you want to talk with the people who run it, on Saturdays it's open until 1, but on the weekdays it's also open until 4 p.m. But basically you have this cemetery all to yourself. Now, even though this was a working class cemetery, in the late 1800s, you would still see people hanging out here, having picnics, eating with their family, hanging out, going for a stroll, for a few reasons. One, there was a few residential neighborhoods that were pretty packed before in the late 1800s, early 1900s. That was Blissville, down here in Queens, mostly Irish. A little bit further down is Maspeth, also mostly Irish, and still to this day mostly Irish. And then you also have Greenpoint, Brooklyn. So people would come here from those neighborhoods and sometimes take the ferry over from Midtown Manhattan all the way down here. And that ferry was mostly in service of people attending processions here in the cemetery. So aside from attending processions, they would come here, casually stroll, have picnics, and a bunch of other fun things. But that sounds rather weird for today's day and age, to have a huge picnic in the middle of a cemetery? Well, it's because our relationship with death has changed significantly. Before, death used to be seen as something normal, something to be embraced. So much so that some people even had skulls on their desks, sometimes actual human skulls on their desks. Death was much more closer to the people of the 1800s, not just aside from the wars, but also the disease and also violence and many other things that would happen in busy cities. But nowadays, our relationship to death is not as close. Of course, death still happens to everyone, but death here, we don't really encounter it as often as those people. So we have a much more fear of death. And I think that's why people don't like hanging out in cemeteries anymore. To people nowadays in the Western world, going to a cemetery is rather morbid. It's rather depressing or sad. But if you look at it from the perspective of the 1800s, people here lived full lives. Some of them, might have died from terrible disease. Some of them might have died in war or through a violent crime. There's even some mob bosses that are buried here as well who were probably guilty of many heinous crimes. But I would say a grand majority of the other people here lived full and happy lives. They had brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, friends, communities where they shared much joy with so many other people. So rather than looking around and seeing a bunch of death and nothingness, maybe there is some beauty into walking around a graveyard, showing our mortality and showing that maybe we should just enjoy the life that we have right now at this very moment in time. To just embrace it and take it in all of its pleasure and joy and wonder. Like you are tuning in into this Facebook Live, and I am here with my camera in the middle of this beautiful place with all of you. So, next time you have an opportunity to visit a graveyard, try it. Go to a cemetery and enjoy the cycle of life that is here. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be going to Paris for 2 weeks. Next week you'll be seeing 2 Hidden History episodes, but aside from Hidden History, I'll be exploring neighborhoods. I'll be talking about food history like the croissant, crepes, and coffee. And also I'll be visiting some of the most famous cafes where Hemingway used to drink at. And then you'll be seeing a lot of cathedrals like Saint-Sulpice. You might be seeing the Cathedral Saint-Denis and also Sacre Coeur and many, many others. If you want to lend your support to Urbanist so I can continue making more of these videos, especially when I'm abroad, I have to spend money in order to get data so I can live stream. I think that's the most beautiful part about what I do on Urbanist, is that I'm live here with all of you, and you'll be seeing me live on a daily basis in Paris. If you want to support me, support this channel so it can grow and we can do more amazing things, become a supporter right down there. Think of it as just buying me a coffee every single month, and you get free inside looks to places all around the world. You get your own personal travel channel, which, unlike seeing a show with a major famous host, you get to talk to me and you get to ask me questions directly, and I'll respond to you directly while I'm on live video. So thank you everyone so much for tuning in. Let me show you one more time the views of the skyline. Marnie, can't wait for Paris. Naomi, looking forward for your tour in Europe. Love the old rail tracks in the city of Paris. They are special, not a tourist thing. Maybe I'll go there. Yeah, there's a really cool urban exploration to be had. Hello, Naomi. That's where we'll all end up and pass to another life. Indeed, we will. And thank you everyone so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Did I miss any questions? Let me see. People are arguing my pronunciation of different words over here. Pardon my lack of diction when it comes to these French and Polish sounding names. I'm doing my best and I will continue to improve them. And wow, look at that skyline. Agree. Amazing. Beautiful. Is there available parking? Yes, you can actually bring your car inside here. So there are roads all along the cemetery where you can park right there. No issue. There's no official parking lot. You could just come into the roads and park wherever you want to visit. So you could come here via car. If you're coming via Uber, you could tell the Uber to come inside and drop you off here, and they'll be able to do that. And there's also a nearby train station. I'll let you know where the nearest train station is. I didn't get here by train, I got here by car, but I'll let you know where the nearest train station is. And are the dead family members at those picnics? So, Emmy, that is a great question. In the Western tradition, I think they would just have their own picnics. However, you might be saying that question jokingly, sarcastically. However, if you go to the Chinese tradition, which I'll probably show you one day, definitely want to show you China at some point. If you go to the Chinese tradition, they have actual picnics with their dead family member. So let's say your uncle died, you were a Chinese family, your uncle died, and he loved peaches. He just went crazy for peaches. You would go with your entire family, who's still living, to the gravestone of your uncle and bring him peaches. And also you'll bring food to eat with your family. This has been recently depicted in the film Farewell. It's a film about Chinese American going back to China and encountering some things with death. It's a beautiful drama film starring Awkwafina, a great actress. Check it out. But they show that scene in the film, and it depicts a real like Chinese tradition of having a picnic with your dead family member as if they were there. So thank you everyone so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. If you want to become a supporter, again, press the supporter button right down here, or press the link in the description, or the big become a supporter button. Buy me a virtual cup of coffee of $5 per month. You help bringing urbanists into strange, wonderful places like these, Calvary Cemetery, and across the pond to Paris. Keep being awesome, and always keep on exploring. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.